Hello, welcome to Book Talk. I'm your host, Anthony Moirore. At Book Talk, we get to have an author come and tell us about his book or her book. And today, we have a great guest with us who's going to tell us some interesting stories about selling a home. Now, we will get much more about that from the author himself, who's authored Meth, Murder, and Amazon. And the author is G.S. Gerry. Welcome to the show, G.S. Gerry,
Hey,
or
Anthony.
rather.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I was curious to know about G.S., but you don't have to tell us if you don't feel like.
So Jerry's actually been my nickname since I can remember. My dad's name was Jerry. The
Mm.
GS part is actually it's a little inside joke. It's in the book, so if you read the book, you can actually find what GS stands for. It's
Oh, okay.
one line within the book, so it's hidden in there.
Ah, beautiful. So, where are you from, if I may ask?
Yeah, I'm from the Tampa, Florida, Land O'Lakes area. I'm originally from St. Petersburg, Florida, which is about an hour from here.
Okay. And when did you start writing? That's an interesting story. I always ask the authors.
Yeah, so I actually had a situation at work that happened, and I had to do a whole lot of rewriting for this report. And after I was done, I was like, man, I just feel like I wrote a novel. I should just write a story. And so I had this crazy story that happened to me and my family trying to sell our house. And so I was like, this is it. I'm just gonna write this book. And so that's what I did.
Mm. I believe it's an interesting story that triggered you to write a book. When I mean, we all have stories, and that's something I always say. But some of us have very interesting stories, and yours is one.
Yes, I do agree. I think that's kind of the inspiration for the book, right? Frank Sinatra, I think, probably said it best. That's life, right? And so life happens all the time, and it just seems like it happens in the most ridiculous and hilarious ways to me and my family. So thought I'd give everyone an inside view from from my family's perspective on just trying to sell our home and basically move from one state to another.
Mm. Okay, dive us into it without giving it all out, so that we can go and get the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's basically, my 6 months journey, my family's 6 month journey into just selling our home and moving from Colorado to Florida. And so it's basically the worst thing, the worst assumption that you can ever take, and it just kind of spirals from there. So I get accused of murdering actually one of my children. I get accused of making meth in my garage, like Heisenberg from Breaking Bad. And then I was working at Amazon at the time, so that's kind of how the Amazon fits into it.
Oh, how did it? I mean, I'm curious to know about. You were framed of murdering your own child. I mean, did you actually? Let me get it clear. Did you actually lose a child in your home? I mean, in your
No,
house? Yeah.
I didn't. So no, I actually have 4 kids. I actually have a fifth on the way as well. So the next one's due in November.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, we weren't even in the state when this actually happened. We were visiting my mom who was in Florida. That's kind of when we moved back. And so I got a call one day, and it's just basically the worst assumption possible. Is just spirals out of control. So one day I get accused of murder. 4 days later, I get accused of meth, and so it basically is just a whole roller coaster ride as I just try and sell my home. Takes multiple real estate agents, um, lots of time lost, lots of opportunities lost as I just like I said, just trying to sell my house. Most normal thing in the world, it sounds like.
So, what had triggered the decision to move out of the state?
So actually, we were going to stay in Colorado. That was the original plan. And then my mom got sick, and so my mom was a little older, and so we're like, hey, we don't really want to go back to Florida, but why not? My mom's not going to be around forever, and so that's kind of what we decided. As we were kind of looking at houses in Colorado Springs, we went from one real estate agent. he didn't do his job. And so the lady that was showing us houses in Colorado Springs, she was like, "Hey, I'm leaving this guy. You should come work with me." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." So I go from one real estate agent to real estate agent number two. And during this transition, that's when I found out about my mom. And then I was like, "Well, we're gonna move to Florida." So that was kind of the plan, right? To move to Florida to be closer to mom, and then along the way, just craziness happens.
Mm. And now, where did I mean? What was all this? The cause of all this? I mean, all the stories, all the adventure that you give out there in the book. What was the cause? What was the origin, or what was the goal of the one who initiated all these adventures?
So the goal was pretty much to basically take the one of the worst situations that can happen to you and basically put a funny spin on it, right? So basically, life's going to give you lemons. You can do one of two things, right? You can either just give up or you can turn lemons into lemonade. So that's what I feel like I did. So that's kind of why I've been saying, this the ultimate lemons to lemonade story, right? So many terrible situations, and could have gone a whole lot of really bad ways, but me and the family kind of took it and ultimately moved to Florida. So obviously we're here now. We're in Florida. But it wasn't an easy process, and it took 6 months to sell our house, and this was back in 2019. So it was a pretty big seller's market at the time. So I mean, it's crazy now, but it was still like, hey, your house should be sold within 30 days. 30 days turned into 60 days, turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months.
Hmm. Can you give us an incident or a picture of some one of the incidents that we could be interested to hear?
Yeah. So during the book, we when we're leaving Colorado, we go to visit my mom in Florida. Like we go to take a vacation, and we're driving down the road, and within the first hour of going like on our trip out of Colorado, the police had set up a speed trap, right, like almost immediately after we left. And so I have three kids in the front, I'm driving my truck, three kids in the back. And so we're driving, and I'm driving the speed limit, and all of a sudden I see the cop, right, he's lasering everybody. I'm like, all right, we're good. Puts his lights on, pulls me over. I'm like, guys, I don't know what the heck's happening. Just be calm, right? I wasn't speeding. There was nothing going on. Cop comes over and he's like, hey, license and registration. He's like, you know why I pulled you over? I was like, no, sir, I absolutely do not know why you pulled me over. I wasn't speeding. Uh, you know, I noticed that you were on the road. So obviously I was, following the rules of the road. And he's like, well, we could actually see that you had a baby in the front seat and they were not restrained in their car seat. And I was like, excuse me, are we looking in the same car? Like my youngest kid is 5 at the time, so I have a 5-year old, 7-year old, an 11-year old, and a 13-year old at the time. So there's no infants, kids that are children of that age that would need to be in like an actual baby seat, right? An actual like child car seat for a baby. And
Mhm.
so like the guy's just giving me crap, and he's like, oh well, your tint's too dark and blah blah. And he couldn't get me on speeding, and so he was basically making up all this nonsense. And basically, he was mad because I saw him on the side of the road. I wasn't speeding. And then he's like, oh, your tint's too dark, all this other stuff. And then my daughter, actually, my older daughter was sitting in the back, and she was playing with my other daughter in the front. And so they were like moving around and stuff. And so they were saying all this commotion is essentially, the baby's unrestrained in the car seat. So I'm pulled over on the road for like 30 to 45 minutes, just basically going back and forth on the cop. I'm like, why are you even being like this, right? Like you can clearly see there's no babies here. There's no one unrestrained. Like everybody's where they're supposed to be. And so he ultimately gives me crap, and he's like, oh well, you need to get that tint fixed, blah blah blah. But he didn't write me a ticket. He just gave me a warning and let me go. But that's kind of one of the stories inside the book. And so from the point I list the house, it's like May. From the time we moved to Florida is around November. And so there's a lot of crazy things that happen along the way. Like just stuff that you would almost take for granted just seems like it's just not easy to have, not easy to endure.
Yeah, nothing comes easy, and especially those important things that we want to do in our own life. We face challenges along the way.
Absolutely.
And if I may ask, Do you relate that incident anyhow to the selling, or it is just a story that you were experiencing during the period?
Yeah, so the selling process, right? It's like I said, it's a seller's market right now, and so this was my first time actually selling a house, and this was the first house that me and my family actually owned. So there was some sentimental value there, and with the selling process, there's a lot of things that you don't actually think about whenever you go to sell a home, right? Like first you've got to declutter, so you've got to take out all the stuff, right? If you're a hoarder, like this is a bad situation for you. If you hoard stuff, like people are going to come to your house, they see a mess, right? They're going to be like, hey, maybe we don't want this house, so you got to like you got to get those roll away trash dumpsters to throw all your stuff in, and so that takes a couple of weeks. Then they got to come in and take pictures, then they got to come in and do staging, right? And so there's all these little like tasks within the ultimate task of selling your home, and the goal is right to buy low and sell high. And over the course, it's just like I start at one price point and it just slowly declines. Like we started at like $4.89, and then we end at like $4.55. So it's like it's just terrible.
I can imagine. And how are the other family members responding as you are going all through this? I mean,
During the process or the book reading.
the process of of the selling. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
challenges you are facing.
honestly, when the book, right, Meth, Murder, and Amazon, like it's obviously about the story of us selling our home, and when we were going through this, when I get accused of the murder while I'm in Florida and then making meth, like I obviously told my family about it, and they're like, that's the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. Like you just because you're telling me, like I don't even believe it's true. And so I was like, yeah, it's like you can't even make this stuff up. Like who on earth would like be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get accused of, murder and meth just selling my home, right? Like it's not a mansion or anything, but it's certainly not like a meth home. So like it's just the worst accusations possible and assumptions.
Mm. And is that something common in the state? I mean, that experience that you want to sell, but then some things are coming against you. Because I can imagine, I've watched a lot of detectives movies and things like that, and you start on a path and you kind of end up in a very different path from where you started because there was so much playing into it. I mean, so much interested that we are want to drive the case in a different direction. Is that the case? Is it so chaotic?
It is, and so I started with one real estate agent, and he was actually the guy who sold me the original house. So me and him had a good relationship, and the first month or so, things just didn't go according to plan. I come to find out, he's not even living in the state. He's not doing his job, and so that's where real estate agent number two comes into play. Real estate agent number two is the one who accuses me of the murder and the meth, and she had showed us like 25 houses in Colorado Springs. She had been to my house like 20 times, right? Like we had a relationship, like we were like close, like, and so the fact that she would even say those things is just mind blowing, right? Like, me, like, why would you even like jump to those accusations? And so, obviously, I fired her and their real estate firm, and then I go to finally my third real estate agent. So it's basically like, how many real estate agents does it take to sell one house? It's like an
Mm-hmm.
inside joke, right? So you would think it would only take one agent, but for us and our family, it took three agents just to sell our house.
Mm, that's hectic and quite a challenge to go through. I mean, yeah. And finally, what was your breakthrough, if I may
uh,
ask?
the breakthrough on selling the house. Let me see. We just kept having it on the market and kept dropping the price. I mean, I think it was a lot of us just being flexible. Like we were like kind of set, like, hey, we want to sell at this price point. Everybody's like, oh, you guys are going to make a lot of money. The house is going to sell in like 3 minutes, and that didn't happen. And so it was like, hey, we go from one real estate agent. He's like, hey, um, your price point is right on. In fact, it's too low. We should go higher. And so it starts out real high, and then it ends up being like basically right around or maybe like right under what the market value should be. So I had 50 plus people come through my house. I did like 10 open houses, sent out flyers to the neighbors, like anything you can think of to possibly sell your home. Like I did it through this experience, and it was a nightmare. But we obviously got over the hump. We were able to make it, actually sell the house. Um, Kind of what led to the final sale was the third real estate agent. And so the first two times was like, hey, I know these people, these are going to be my real estate agents. To when I got to the last real estate agent, I was like, hey, let me take some outside counsel. Let me get some good recommendations, from family, from friends. And so that's kind of how I ran into the third real estate agent was my aunt. She knew a real estate agent in Florida, and he was like, hey, I actually know someone in Colorado. And so she's the one who did a really good job getting the house sold. But during the meth and the murder accusations, I'm actually like, this is complete nonsense. They actually said that if I don't get a meth test done, they're going to flag my house in the MLS for suspicious behavior, which anybody listening, that's a lie. They can't do that. And I found out as well. So they were basically just trying to force me into getting a test done on my house because, they're, for whatever reason, they thought I was making meth in my garage.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I want to imagine about. I mean, I haven't sold my house myself, and I want to imagine the kind of exposure that you're going through. 50 people coming in,
yeah,
50 different people, strangers that you don't know, and you just
exactly.
keep on welcoming them. Yes, come see, come see, come see.
Yep, yep, absolutely. You're like, hey, anything to sell the house, whoever comes in, right? Like everybody thinks it's like such an easy process, and it sounds like easy in theory, but it's just crazy how one set of circumstances can change pretty much everything.
Mhm.
And so that's basically what happened. I actually take things into my own hands. I'm like, hey, they basically said that Colorado's the meth capital of the world. That's why they jumped to this assumption about their meth about the meth. They're like, we smelled something funny in your garage. It smells like burning plastic. And I'm like, was plastic actually burning? And she's like, no, we saw something in their container in your garage. It's a 2-car garage, mind you. Like it's not a big garage. And so I'm like, well, what did you see? And so they were like, just start being stupid about it. And they're like, you need to get a meth test. And I was like, well, no, I'm not getting a meth test. And they're like, well, it only costs $50. I was like, I don't care if it costs 5 cents. I'm not getting a meth test. I'm like, you're being ridiculous. Like, first off, I wasn't even in the state when this happened. Like, you guys got freaked out. You called the cops on me. You said I did all these things. Now all of a sudden I'm making meth. Like, I don't know how we got. I for one that I even would murder anybody or even hurt anybody to the fact that now I'm making meth in my garage. So I fired them, but I was like still upset about it. And I was like, hey, you know what I should do? I should go to the news about this. So I go and I actually send my story out to the news. The news actually does come and do an article on Broadcasting Colorado for about 5 minutes because the news messes up as well. And so when I'm on the news, I'm on real estate agent number 3 at the time. When they do the initial like interview, they do like a pan out view of the house, and of course, what's in at the front of the house, it's the new real estate agent sign. So the interview goes live, posted online. It's my real estate agent sign, my current one, in the photo, and people start blowing her phone up. They're like, "How could you do this to this guy? Like, what is wrong with you?" Oh man, my real estate agent, she calls me and she's like, Gerry, what did you do? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I went to the news. I turned a bad situation to a good situation. She's like, no, you don't understand. People think I did this. And I read the article and she's like, my sign's in there. I was like, oh my gosh, it is in there. So I had to call the news station up. I was like, hey, can you edit that first frame out? And they're like, no, we have to pull the whole thing. We can't edit anything that's already been live. So pull off the news. Can't, it's no longer there. I did get a little video recording of it, and then the actual news article is still there online if you can find it. So I still have a link to it. I sent it to people randomly, but I tell people the story when before I wrote the book, and they're like, "That's the craziest dang thing I've ever heard." I was like, "Yes." Now imagine actually going through it, right? Like you can't make this stuff up.
Hmm. Interesting. And I'm kind of thinking now there is this accusation. I mean, you're accused, and the news is going around, and your name is flying right, left, and center. And you choose not to take the meth test. The meth test. Uh, is it to the fact that I want to imagine because I've had it severally. Is it to the fact that you could end up being framed or something like that?
No, the fact that they would even say that I was making meth was like my biggest issue. Like you've been around me so many times, like you've been in my house so many times, in my garage like at least 15, 20 times. Like the fact that you're having this reaction because it smelled like burning plastic and she's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, I've had family members deal with it and meth is, a huge deal in Colorado or whatever." Okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean I'm making meth. I do anything with meth, right? Like come on, like this is the most ridiculous thing ever. And so I was like, nah, I'm not getting this done. In fact, like if you're gonna be stupid, like we can just go our separate ways. So she's like, well, if you don't get the meth test, then we're gonna have to flag your house in the MLS. I was like, well, you can just consider this answer our arrangement because you're good and not gonna basically threaten me and force me into doing something that one doesn't even need me to be done, and two, like you're still upset about the quote unquote murder from a few days before. And now you're trying to throw some other bogus BS out there. And so I was like, no, I'm not having any more of this. I'll just go find somebody else. I've already done it once, right? What's one more? Maybe the third time's the charm.
Mm. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Such a story. And yes, to those who are tuning in right now, or those who get to listen to these after we are through, you're listening to Book Talk at Book Place. And our guest today is G.S. Gerry with the book Meth, Murder, and Amazon. And please remember to share these live or these recorded version with everybody out there and subscribe to our channel as we keep on moving. Thank you very much. We are very honored to have you, Gerry, on our show, and we are enjoying your book so far. We need to
Yeah,
get it and read it much more.
yeah.
Uh,
It's on
mhm.
audiobook as well. It's pretty good. I hired a professional to do it, so it's not me narrating. It's actually someone that goes through the
How,
Audible on Amazon platform.
okay. How long did it take you to write it?
So to write the book, I started last October and I was done January-ish time frame. So it took me about 3 months to write it. But I mean, I had the story. What's interesting about the book is I would say there's probably nothing out there that's even remotely close to this. I don't follow the normal traditions of writing, right? When we talk, I feel like we use we don't talk in normal specific sentences. Like there's no like specific flow you have to talk through, right? We're just there's run-on sentences, things like that. And so I was like, well, why can't you write a book like that? And so I basically try to make it something that's not out there, right? I wanted to do something different. Like I don't want it to just be like every book out there. Like I want it to be different. And so I was like, hey, this is either going to go really good or this is going to go really bad, right? And so if you're trying something new, it's either it could turn out well or it could turn out to be, hey, this was a bad idea. You probably shouldn't have done that. But the audiobook is really great. I listened to it with the family. Everybody was laughing a lot. And so um, yeah,
And I was wondering, could we have a feel of it? Do you have the book with you? If I may, sorry, I didn't ask this.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we can
I'm
have
gonna
a.
have to go get it.
Let's get it. Let's get it.
All right, all right. Hold on one
Okay.
second.
Okay, that's okay. Just go get it. So once again, you're listening to Book Talk at the Book Place, being your host, Anthony Merore. And we are having Gerry with us on the show and with the book Meth, Murder, and Amazon. Now, all the past episodes of Book Talk, you can get them at bookplacemedia.com or Anchor FM and search for Book Place or rather Book Talk at Book Place and listen to the episodes, buy the books. This is why we are doing it. This is why we have the authors with us coming and telling us about their books. And right now we have back Gerry. Hey, here is the book. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you
Okay.
see it.
Let's have a feel of the book, the way and the style that you tell us about. That is something not so common. Let's hear.
Yeah,
Read us,
absolutely.
read us a
So,
section. Yeah.
radio section. All
Yeah.
right. Let's see. I'll just start in the beginning. How about that?
Oh, that's
So,
good.
so in chapter one, right, I have an intro, but then I also have a disclaimer, right? And so the reason for the GS Jerry is I wanted to keep my work life kind of separate from this story. I don't want people like I do cybersecurity and credit card compliance, and so there's a lot of Fortune 500 customers. I don't want them to Google my name and be like, oh, this guy coming to do our assessment. He murders people and he makes meth in his garage. No, we don't want him out there. So I was like, that's kind of also the reason for the pen name.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, so I do an intro and then I do a disclaimer, and basically, so I wanted to keep it all separate. So all the stories are true in this book. I just make up ridiculous names, and so just a couple of names, right? The first real estate agent, his name is Kafwe. The lady who accuses me of the meth and the murder, her name is Dobby Snobby, and so it's just a lot of really funny character spins and plays on the characters, but I almost make it like me and you are having a conversation throughout the whole book, so it doesn't necessarily read that your traditional book. There's actually on purpose typos. There's a lot of like movie references, like pop culture references, things like that. So all right, I'll start.
Okay.
So chapter one, attempt number one, flyers out to Arizona. Before we get to the meth and the murder, we have to start at the beginning, the very beginning. Once upon a time, yeah, right, get the hell out of here, start over. Let's introduce the starting lineup for these misadventures. The father, standing over 5'9", number 32, Daryl Drake. The mother, standing 5'4" and 7/8, number 31, Sergeant Shredded. The firstborn, standing teenager height, number 13, the Great Giordini. The secondborn, standing slightly taller teenager height, number 11, Garut. The third born, standing taller than elementary height, number 9, Nader. And the fourth born, standing smaller elementary height, number 5, Whitaker. Let's get ready to crumble.
Let's do
It
it.
all falls down. It all falls down. And so it's actually different about this book too is there's evidence included.
Yeah.
So as you can see, people will read this book and be like, "No, this guy probably definitely did it. He probably makes meth and stuff." There's
Mhm.
actually there's actually evidence in here in the book. There's actually police reports in here and other things.
Okay.
So yeah, that's
But I hope the photos are not there with the real estate agents' banners.
no. I blur out the real estate agent signs, and I kind of like play with the house like images a little bit, just so like you can't be like, oh, that's definitely the house, but like you'll know it if you see it. There's actually the police reports in there. I have all the police reports of when all this stuff happened. I include contracts, different photos, different trips that we take while we're just going on this nonsense misadventure. I basically call it, the Lemony Snicket says the series of unfortunate events. This is like the complete opposite of that. It's like the misadventures never end, right? And so
Mhm.
just a story of just crazy things that happen in the most ridiculous ways, right? Like who can say, right? It's almost like a joke you would tell, like hang out with your buddies, like, hey, what's the worst thing that you ever been accused of? Oh, I've been accused of murdering one of my kids and making meth in my garage.
Mm.
What? Where's everybody going? Why is everybody leaving? Right? And so like this is nuts.
Mm. Now, 1 minute of the book. What would you have done different if to change the story, if to experience a different experience of selling?
I would have done my research for one, just because the guy that I worked with to buy the house doesn't mean that might necessarily be the person to sell the house. And so, if I would have done it all over again, I would have done some better research. I would have reached out to more friends, reached out to some different family, and be like, hey, do you know any good real estate agents? I kind of basically take it upon myself, like, I know best. I already have this good relationship with this guy. We had a good time buying the house. So, all right. I mean, if you bought the house, you obviously should be able to sell the house. Not a crazy leap, but that's not what happens at all. And so, like I said, the first real estate agent, he basically flies the coop. The second one is the one who accuses me of the meth and the murder. And then the third one has to endure basically the interview from hell and all the backlash because I'm stupid and I'm like, yeah, I should go talk to the news about that. So I probably wouldn't do that either. I would definitely change that as well. Like, just because you're all upset and you're like, hey, I got this crazy story, doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily turn out the way that you want it. But it's like, hey, I'm going to get revenge. I'm going to get these guys back. Like, they shouldn't be able to do this to anybody else, and even that backfires. So right, like, even while I'm like trying to right wrongs in my life, it's even those things are backfiring. And so that's why I said it. The ultimate inspiration is life, right? Life happens to us all. We all have crazy things we go through, but it's really, how do you take that and turn it into something more, or take that and make it a positive thing? And so that's what I did. I turned a difficult situation into something funny. The story is, ultimately it's a comedy. It's told in a very funny way. It's like me and you are having a conversation throughout the book.
Mm,
It's 27,500 words, so it's not a long book. I would say it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours to read all the way through. But I also wanted to do something different. I want to grip you from the first word all the way throughout, and so you should be pretty much laughing or thinking, "Are you kidding me?" Every page, because there's something ridiculous on almost every page.
mm. And where can we get the book for those of us who would be interested to read it?
So, Meth Murder on Amazon, you can find it on Amazon. Yes, it is that Amazon. It's also on Audible, iTunes, um,
Yeah.
and my website. So I do have the links on my website, greatden.com.
Okay. We'll share that on the show notes as we upload it. And we ask the viewer to go and get the book and read everything about Meth, Murder, and Amazon by G.S. Gerry. Once again, we thank you very much, Gerry, for taking your time and coming onto this show and telling us
Yeah,
about the beautiful book.
thank
We
you for
really,
having me. It's been a great time. Thank you.
we really appreciate. But before you go, always at Book Talk, we ask someone to leave us with some few words that we'll always remember. And this is your time.
Absolutely. So basically, my thing is, why not, right? Dr. Seuss tried how many times to get his book published? Something like 26, 27 times. It doesn't matter what people tell you, what they say, right? If you want to do it, just do it, right? There's nothing stopping you but yourself. And so, this book actually kind of started out as an inside joke. I'm that kid that growing up, I played a lot of sports. I played a lot of basketball, and so if it was book report time, I was going to find the movie to do that book report. I didn't read books. I'm too busy for that. So the fact that I even wrote a book is a story in and of itself. And so, there's nothing that you can't do. Don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. Just if you want to do it, do it. Why not, right? Why not you?
Wow, that's beautiful. And when it doesn't work out with your first agency, go to the second agency. When the third agency messes up, at some point you're still gonna sell. So just
That's
keep on
right. Just keep going. That's right.
keep going. So thank you very much, Gerry. We appreciate. It's been an honor having you on this show. And thank you all to all the viewers and all the listeners who listen to the podcast. We really appreciate. It's because of you that we do this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
And bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.